Her name was Diane. She was 61 years old. She drove a white Lexus. She wore her hair in the specific, careful style of someone who spends money on it regularly and expects it to communicate something. She sat across a conference table from me in a law office in Charlotte, North Carolina, with her attorney beside her and a stack of papers in front of her and the specific, settled confidence of someone who has already decided that this meeting is a formality. She had been managing my father's affairs for 22 months. She had also been stealing from him for 22 months. She did not know that I knew. She did not know who she was sitting across from. She was about to find out. My name is Captain Rachel Monroe. United States Army Military Police Corps. I have spent 11 years investigating financial crimes, fraud, and the specific, complex architecture of deception that people construct when they believe they will not be caught. They are almost never as careful as they believe. Diane was not careful at all. She just did not expect anyone to be looking. I need to take you back to the beginning. Not the beginning of Diane. The beginning of my father. His name is Thomas Monroe. He is 68 years old. He served 24 years in the United States Army, infantry, 2 deployments to Vietnam's aftermath, 1 to the Gulf. He retired as a first sergeant with the specific, quiet dignity of a man who has given a significant portion of his life to something larger than himself and who does not require acknowledgement for the giving. He is the reason I enlisted. Not because he pushed me. He never pushed me. He answered every question I asked about service with the specific, honest precision of someone who wants you to choose the right thing rather than the thing he chose. I asked enough questions to understand that the thing he chose was the right thing for me too. I enlisted at 21. He cried when I graduated basic training. Not in front of me, I found out from my mother. He stood in the parking lot after the ceremony and cried quietly in a way that she said she had never seen from him before. My mother's name is Grace. She died when I was 26. Breast cancer. She fought it the way she fought everything, methodically, without complaint, with the specific attention of someone who understands that fighting well is not the same as fighting loudly. After my mother died, my father was alone. He managed. He was a first sergeant. Managing was what he had been trained to do, and he applied that training to the management of his own grief with the same discipline he had applied to everything else. He was not broken by her loss. He was changed by it, in the specific, permanent way that losing the person you have shared your life with changes people. But not broken. He had the house. He had his routines. He had me, calling every Sunday. And then he had the stroke. The stroke happened 18 months before this story begins. Not a catastrophic stroke. Not the kind that takes language or mobility or the fundamental architecture of who a person is. But significant. The kind that affects the specific, complex tasks of financial management, the tracking of accounts, the processing of statements, the particular cognitive work of maintaining the oversight of a financial life. My father needed help. He called his brother Raymond. Raymond Monroe is 64 years old. He is my father's younger brother. He had spent his adult life in Charlotte in the specific, comfortable proximity to his older brother's stability, borrowing money occasionally, being helped occasionally, receiving the specific, sustained generosity of a man who believed family meant something. My father trusted Raymond. Raymond had a girlfriend named Diane. My father trusted Diane because he trusted Raymond. He gave Raymond power of attorney. Raymond gave Diane access. I was in Germany when this happened. I had been assigned to a post in Stuttgart for a 14-month rotation that kept me significantly occupied, and that meant my Sunday calls with my father were the primary thread of my connection to what was happening at home. My father told me about the power of attorney on a Sunday call in October. I said, "Dad, are you sure about Raymond?" He said, "He is my brother, Rachel." I said, "I know. But are you sure?" He said, "He is family." I said, "I know." I noted it. I filed it. I continued my rotation. I should have pushed harder. I know that now. The calls changed gradually. Not immediately. Not in a way that announced itself. But over the following months something in my father's voice on Sundays shifted in the specific way that things shift when a person is being managed and does not fully know they are being managed. He mentioned Diane more. Not suspiciously, casually. She was handling his bills. She was managing his accounts. She had helped him with a tax matter. She had suggested that some of his investments be restructured. Restructured. I heard that word on a Sunday in March and I said, very carefully, Dad. What investments were restructured? He said, Diane handled it. She said it was more efficient. I said, more efficient how? He said, I am not sure of the specifics. She explained it but I could not follow all of it. I said, Dad. Can you send me the statements? The monthly statements from all your accounts? He said, of course. Let me ask Diane to pull them together. I said, no. Do not ask Diane. Go to the bank yourself and request them directly. In person. Just you. A pause. Rachel, he said. You are worrying me. Good, I said. Go to the bank, Dad. He went to the bank. He called me 2 days later. He said, Rachel. The numbers. They are not. He stopped. Tell me, I said. They are not what I expected, he said. How much? I said. He told me. I sat in my office in Stuttgart and I did the specific, rapid arithmetic of someone who has spent 11 years calculating the financial dimensions of crimes. $847,000. Gone. Over 22 months. In a pattern of transactions that I understood immediately, from the brief description my father gave me of what the statements showed, was not legitimate management. It was theft. Systematic. Patient. Executed through a power of attorney by people who had understood that the person they were stealing from could not track it and that the person who might have caught it was in Germany. I requested emergency leave. I flew home the next morning. I want to tell you about the 8 weeks between landing in Charlotte and sitting across from Diane in that conference room. Not because the 8 weeks are dramatic in the way that stories sometimes require drama. Because they are the most important part of what I am telling you and they deserve their full weight. I arrived in Charlotte on a Wednesday afternoon. I drove directly from the airport to my father's house. He was in the kitchen when I arrived. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, which had been 7 months earlier, at Christmas, before the Sunday call in March. He looked at me when I walked in. He said, You came. I said, Of course I came. He said, I should have listened to you. About Raymond. I said, Dad. Do not do that. What happened is not your fault. He looked at his hands. I trusted him, he said. I know, I said. He is my brother, he said. I know, I said. I sat down across from him at the kitchen table. I am going to fix this, I said. Not all of it, some of what is gone cannot be recovered. But I am going to find every dollar that can be found and I am going to build a case that makes sure this never happens to anyone in this family again. He looked at me. You know how to do this, he said. Yes, I said. He nodded. The specific, trusting nod of a first sergeant who has spent his life understanding that the right person in the right role is the most powerful thing available. He was putting me in the right role. I spent the first week getting access. Not to Diane's records, I could not access those yet. To my father's. Every account. Every statement. Every transaction record going back 26 months. I sat at my father's kitchen table with my laptop and 6 months' worth of bank statements and I began the work that I had spent 11 years preparing for. The pattern emerged within the first 48 hours. It was not subtle. Not when you know what to look for. The transactions had been structured to avoid the automatic reporting thresholds that banks use to flag suspicious activity, each individual transfer small enough to fly under automated detection, but the aggregate across 22 months amounting to $847,000 moved from my father's accounts to accounts I identified, through public records and the specific investigative tools available to a military police officer on emergency leave with a very specific motivation, as belonging to Diane. Not Raymond directly. Diane. Raymond was the mechanism. Diane was the destination. I documented everything. Not the way a civilian documents things. The way a military investigator documents things, with the specific, rigorous attention to chain of evidence and authentication that makes documentation usable in court. Every transaction. Every account number. Every date. Every amount. The pattern that connected them. The destination accounts. The specific evidence that the transfers were not legitimate management expenses but personal enrichment. 1,200 pages. Organized. Indexed. Annotated. By the end of week 3 I had built a case that I would have been proud of in any court-martial I had ever tried. Week 4 I hired a civilian attorney. His name was Marcus Webb. He had spent 20 years in financial fraud litigation in Charlotte, and he had, when I sat across from him and put the documentation on his desk, the specific expression of a man who is looking at work that has been done correctly. He said, "Captain Monroe. Who taught you to build a case like this?" I said, 11 years of the Army. He said, "I want to file immediately." I said, "Not yet." He looked at me. I said, "I want the meeting first." He understood. The meeting was Marcus's idea as much as mine. Not to give Diane an opportunity to explain herself. There was no explanation available for what the documentation showed. But to give us the specific, documented evidence of her response to confrontation, her specific denials, her specific admissions, the particular quality of her behavior when she understood that the thing she believed was not hidden. That evidence would be useful. In court, in front of a jury, there is a specific value to the documented moment when a defendant understands they have been caught. Not the catching itself. The understanding of it. I wanted that documented. Marcus arranged the meeting under the pretext of a routine review of my father's affairs. He told Diane's attorney that my father's daughter was home from military service and wanted to meet with the people managing her father's financial affairs. Diane agreed. She had no reason not to. She did not know who she was agreeing to meet. The conference room. I want to tell you about the conference room carefully because the conference room is the center of this story and I want to describe it precisely. It was a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Marcus Webb's conference room on the 14th floor of a building in uptown Charlotte. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. A long oval table. Marcus at the end, his associate beside him, the documentation in organized stacks that Diane could not yet see the full extent of. I sat across from Diane. I had made a specific decision about what to wear. My uniform. Captain's bars on my collar. Military Police Corps regimental insignia. Every decoration I had earned in 11 years of service. I had made this decision for the same reason I always make decisions about uniforms in civilian contexts, not for theater, but for precision. The uniform communicated something specific before I said a word. It communicated that I was not my father's confused daughter trying to sort out an elderly man's finances. It communicated that I was an investigator. Diane walked in and saw me and something happened in her face. Not guilt, not yet. The specific, recalibrating expression of someone who has walked into a room expecting one thing and has found another. She sat down. Her attorney sat beside her. Marcus opened. He said, "Thank you for coming. Captain Monroe is home from her assignment in Germany and has been reviewing her father's financial records. She has some questions." Diane looked at me. I looked at her. I said, "Good morning, Diane." She said, "Good morning." I said, "I want to start by giving you the opportunity to tell me something." She waited. I said, I want you to tell me where $847,000 of my father's money went. The conference room was completely silent. Her attorney said, Captain Monroe, that is a very serious. I said, I know what it is. I turned back to Diane. I have been building this documentation for 8 weeks, I said. Every transaction. Every account. Every transfer. The pattern of structuring to avoid automated detection. The destination accounts registered in your name. I placed the first stack of documents on the table in front of her. She looked at them. The specific, complex expression of someone who is calculating rapidly how much was known, how much was documented, what the available positions were. Her attorney said, my client will need time to review. I said, your client can have as much time as she needs. What your client does not have is a version of events that accounts for what is in front of her. Because there is no version. I looked at Diane. Her hands were on the table. I said, I want to ask you one question. Not for the documentation is complete. For my own understanding. She looked at me. My father served 24 years, I said. He gave his body and his years to this country. The money you took is the accumulated pension and investment returns of those 24 years. The thing he built so that his last years would be comfortable. I held her gaze. He trusted your partner because Raymond is his brother, I said. He trusted you because he trusted Raymond. That trust was the specific mechanism of what you did. I paused. My question is this, I said. Was there a moment, any moment in 22 months, when you thought about what you were taking and from whom? The room was completely still. Diane looked at the documents in front of her. She looked at my uniform. She looked at me. Then she said, very quietly. I thought about it. Her attorney said, Diane. She said, I thought about it and I did it anyway. The room stayed still. I held what she had said. Then I said, thank you. I turned to Marcus. File, I said. The filing happened that afternoon. Criminal charges, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, theft by conversion, wire fraud, filed jointly with the Charlotte District Attorney's Office, which Marcus had been in contact with for 3 weeks in preparation. Civil recovery action filed simultaneously. A referral to the state bar regarding Diane's attorney, who it turned out had known more than he had disclosed. Raymond was charged separately. His charges were slightly different in structure because his role was different, the mechanism rather than the primary beneficiary. But charged. I called my father that evening. He was in the kitchen. I could hear the specific sounds of the house, the refrigerator, the clock in the hallway that he had never replaced the battery in and that ticked slightly unevenly because of it. I said, it is filed, Dad. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, all of it? All of it, I said. Criminal and civil. Both of them. Another silence. Will they go to prison? He said. That is for the court, I said. What I can tell you is that the case is solid. Marcus says he has not seen documentation this complete in 20 years. You built it, he said. Yes, I said. In 8 weeks, he said. 11 years of training, I said. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Rachel. I said, Dad. He said, your mother would have been so proud. I held the phone. I did not speak for a moment. Then I said, I know. I am proud, he said. I know that too, I said. We stayed on the phone for a long time after that. Just the sounds of the house. The refrigerator. The uneven clock. Enough. The trial happened 14 months later. Diane received 5 years. The judge cited the specific, aggravated nature of the exploitation, the deliberate targeting of a stroke survivor who had trusted her, the sustained duration of it, the specific amount. Raymond received 3 years. The civil recovery produced a partial recovery of the stolen funds, not all of it, Not close to all of it, but a significant portion that was returned to my father's accounts under a structured order that will continue to be enforced for years. My father sat in the courtroom for the verdict. He sat in his suit. The same suit he had worn to my mother's funeral. I had noticed when he put it on that morning, and I had not said anything because sometimes the things people do without explaining them are not things that need explaining. When the verdict was read, he sat very straight. The first sergeant posture. The posture of 24 years of service. The posture of a man who has maintained his dignity through things that would have cost most people theirs. After the court session ended and the courtroom began to empty, I sat beside him. He looked at the front of the room for a long time. Then he said, "It is done." "It is done," I said. "Good," he said. He stood up. He straightened his jacket. He walked out of the courtroom. I walked beside him. I am back in Germany now. My rotation continued after the trial. The army does not pause for personal matters, which is something that I understood long before this situation and that I accept as part of the life I chose. I call my father every Sunday. The calls are the same as they have always been: his voice, the sounds of the house, the specific, ordinary quality of two people who love each other maintaining the thread of their connection across the distance. He has help now. Not Raymond. Not anyone with power of attorney. A professional fiduciary service, a firm that specializes in managing the financial affairs of veterans and that operates under a level of oversight and accountability that I vetted personally before authorizing. He is fine. He is more than fine. He called me last Sunday and he told me something I want to tell you. He said he had been going through boxes. The boxes from the attic, the ones he had not gone through since my mother died. And in one of the boxes he had found a letter. My mother's handwriting. On a piece of paper that had been folded and tucked into an envelope and placed at the bottom of a box of his service records. She had written it before she died. He had not known it was there. He read me the last line. He said, she wrote, "Take care of each other. That is all that matters in the end. Take care of each other." I sat in my office in Stuttgart and I held the phone. Then I said, "We did, Dad. We are doing it." He said, "Yes. We are." We stayed on the phone for a long time. The sounds of the house. The refrigerator. The uneven clock. Always the uneven clock. Before you go, I want to say something directly to anyone listening. To anyone whose family member is in a position of vulnerability. Whose parent or grandparent or loved one has had to give someone else control of their financial affairs. I want to tell you what I tell every soldier I supervise who is preparing for deployment and who has a family member at home who may need help. Verify. Not because everyone is Raymond. Not because everyone is Diane. Because the people who are Raymond, the people who look at a trusted position beside someone vulnerable and calculate what it is worth to them, those people exist. And they are not strangers who announce themselves. They are the people who have already been extended trust. The people who have already been let close. Verify. Get the statements directly. Ask the specific questions. And if the answers do not line up, trust the not lining up. The truth is in the documentation. It is always in the documentation. Find it before someone else decides not to. Drop the word handcuffs in the comments if this story reached something real in you. Handcuffs for Diane. Handcuffs for Raymond. Handcuffs for every person who has looked at someone's trust and decided it was an opportunity. And for my father. For every veteran whose service deserves to be protected not just in the field but at home. In the accounts. In the house with the uneven clock. If you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about justice, and about the people who came home and built the case that needed to be built. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.